fine. I don't Here we go. Now we're recording. Just want to introduce myself quick. I'm Tam Trapp. I was Tam Langen, but I got married. And I've been in real estate for 11 years now. I was like looking around, who's tracking that, Wendy? I don't know. I've been at the Keller Williams Lake Minnetonka office the entire time. And prior to that, I did not have a background in business or finance or anything like that. I was actually in medicine. So we're going to go through my profit and loss net sheet today, like an actual one. I've adjusted the numbers, I've rounded them, but it is my actual live P&L. It matches the one that I'm sitting with today that's not finished yet because it's December 5th. But we're going to go through that. Actually, we're going to talk a little bit about why it's important, and then actually dig into mine and show you around. And then I will provide you a copy of that Excel spreadsheet after class. And I'll let you know how you guys can get that. Or of course, just message Lydia and she'll send it to you also. So she'll have a copy as well. But the P&L for me was super important. I didn't have a background in business or finance or anything like that. I was just a single mom and I had to pay really close attention to my numbers because I got into real estate by just walking out on my cushy corporate job. And then all the money I made really mattered. So I kept track of it really well. And the P&L, actually, I had a really great mentor, Dana Murray. She was also in this office right when I started in real estate. I took bold right away when I got into real estate, and I learned really quickly that tracking this stuff was really important to make sure that I was successful in my business, not just closing transactions and doing sales, but making sure I was ready for tax season, because I was just like a W-2 employee prior to that. You know, I just did like a 1040 easy, filing my taxes, and then the game totally changed. And I did not want to be surprised. So does everybody have a P&L? Does everybody like actively use one now? I'm assuming yes, maybe. Well, you will after today. How's that? Even if you need to backtrack all of the year, that's okay. And then you're going to be ready for 2025. So the biggest things was, for me, of course, I was just trying to make sure that I knew where all my money was going or how much I was going to have at the end of the year and what do I pay for taxes, things like that. But the biggest things we talk about, I pull a lot of my information from being in KW for so long, from MREA, the economic model, the budget model. I followed a lot of those things. I've taken a lot of those trainings. And these are the biggest ones that came up, right? Tracking might not be as important right away. Budgeting, you might not have a budget right away. But for me, especially, it's figuring out how much money is coming home to my family, right? Like, what is your actual income? We can make a lot of money, and I've seen a lot of people in this industry spend a lot of money to make that money. And I've always been really passionate about how much money is coming home to your family, right? Like, what do you get to take home to live? And you don't really know that unless you have a P&L that's filled out, right? The other ones I really like is I use my P&L to business plan. And you're going to see a little bit when we jump into my P&L. It's not just a P&L. I've doctored it a little bit to track my transactions. I've also tracked my goals and my income on it as well. And you guys can utilize that function if you want, and if you don't, that's totally fine too. The biggest one of all, though, is to file your taxes. I think I just was afraid when I first started to not be like the people who had back taxes. I didn't want that to be me because I knew there was not a way I was going to recover from being behind on that. So the biggest thing here, we're going to talk about a lot of these things, not just in like overarching ideas, but I'm not a tax advisor. So of course you got to reach out to whoever does your taxes, but just some basic things when you guys are doing your P&Ls, because our P&L really truly isn't just for tracking and goal setting and things like that. You got to print this bad boy out and you got to give it to your accountant to file your taxes at the end of the year. So we'll get into that. Biggest things for me, John and I were just talking about this. As a realtor, our job, we don't have a CFO unless your team gets large enough and you hire a CFO and you leverage this task to someone else. Our job is to work with our clients, right? We help them buy and sell homes. And our focus day to day is with our clients and their needs. And we don't just live in Excel spreadsheets every day like people who do finance. So the biggest thing is to keep the system simple so that you do it all the time. So we're trying to keep this as simple as possible just to make sure that it's something that we have a easy system in place. It comes natural to ourselves so we don't overthink it and then not end up doing it. So for me, right away, Dana let me know. She's like, separate your bank accounts. which I did. And so when I was in my first year in real estate, I didn't have an LLC. I didn't have an S Corp. I just created a separate bank account, personal bank account. And I had all my commissions go in there and all my expenses come out of that account. That was the best piece of advice they could have gotten. I know some people don't get that advice, but you're getting it today. So then nothing else goes in there, right? Don't commingle it with other things, like John was saying, right? If you've got investment properties, things like that, have your commissions, your real estate sales business separate. I have an LLC, so I have a business checking account, but to have a business checking account, you have to have an EIN. And to have an EIN, you have to have an LLC. You don't have to have an LLC, by the way, when you do real estate, you just do your Schedule C if you don't. Just create a separate personal checking account. Otherwise, if you do have an LLC, open up a business checking account and keep everything in there, commissions in, expenses out. I save all my receipts in one place. Some people, is anyone still, I like paper copies of things when it comes to finances for some reason, that everything else is digital. I'm always like, yeah, I'll take a paper copy of that receipt. And then I just shove them all in the same, I literally have a basket. So when I get home, I just shove them all in there that day. Just like get them out of my purse, get them in there so they're all in one place. Or you're the type of person that scans it and then emails it to yourself or sends it to yourself. Also works, right? Just keep them all in one place. If they're electronic, put them all in one file, and then it just says receipts, right? I'll be honest, for me personally, I don't scan all mine. If the IRS wants to come and knock in, they're gonna get all the paper copies. And they're all gonna be in one place. But I do like the electronic version. I just haven't transferred over to that yet, right? Because it's so ingrained into me to just store them away. Of course, if you use something like TurboTax, it does these things for you, right? Does anyone use TurboTax? I don't know if anybody does online or anything. And you can scan receipts and upload them right into your TurboTax, things like that. But you might not be using this P&L system if you're using TurboTax and you're used to using that. The other big one is tracking your mileage. And I am saying at minimum, track your weekly, because you still remember what you did that week, right? At minimum, I try to track my mileage every day, but of course I forget, right? So once Friday gets there, I'm like, wait a minute, did I not do that all? And then I sit down and I'm like, where was I this week? What was I doing? So that you still remember. I say this is the biggest one because mileage is such a big expense for us and we drive all the time. And I know when my first year, I think I forgot for a month and a half and I was like, what did I do? I have no idea. So I didn't do that again. So at minimum, guys, track it I track it weekly. I put a little Google Calendar reminder. It's just like a task on a Friday morning, or if it's Sunday morning, whatever it is, you're prepping for the week, go back and do your mileage for the week.
Use like your shoe time report for that, or do you actually have something in your car that you write down?
Yes, good question there's so many ways to track mileage, and some people, again, I don't know what it's like, the elder millennial in me. I don't want my like phone tracking me everywhere I go all the time. Some people have like every time you get in your car, it tracks you. That's not me. Love it, but I'm like too paranoid for that. So I actually have, again, I have a Google Calendar, I follow it, but I also have an agenda book and I write the mileage on every day. I know that seems like a little old school, but it's just the system that works for me. But some people, yeah, there's apps that track them, things like that, and then just take that and put it in. I definitely pull up my showing time when I'm like trying to figure out what all those mileages are, just to make sure I'm remembering all of that clearly, for sure. But I also extensively use my Google Calendar, so I can go back and be like, yeah, where was I? Oh yeah, it's in my Google Calendar, to keep track of it. But you don't have to be a Google Calendar fanatic. Just think back for the week. Don't go too far ahead, or don't get so far behind that you can't remember what you were doing. Another one, update your P&L bi-weekly or monthly at minimum, because again, we're going to forget. If you have everything going into the same account and then coming out of the same account, it's a lot easier to do checks and balances on that, right? All your receipts should match the stuff that's in your bank statement, should match what's on your P&L. Makes it a lot easier to not have things commingled. So bi-weekly or monthly at minimum. But if you have everything going in and out of the same account and it's been 2 months and you forgot, then you can pull your bank statements and you can check back to your bank statements and say, oh yeah, that's where I was spending all of that. And then again, if you have all your receipts in one spot, then you can go back and say, yep, that's where all of that was, right? But I do this bi-weekly or monthly at minimum, because that's when your bank statements come out, right? And you can check back and you're like, okay, yep, that's what I spent. And yeah, using your bank statements to confirm the data. I just think it's really complicated if you have funds commingled, right? You're not sure if that Amazon order was personal or for something else you were doing. So keep them separate. That was a really good question on the mileage. We'll see that too on my net sheet. For other people, that's not. If you on your taxes don't claim your mileage, but you claim like your car payment or your lease, that might be a little bit different. I would still track my mileage even if I didn't claim my mileage, just to see like how many miles are you actually putting on your car, to make sure, does it make sense for me to claim my mileage, or does it make sense for me to claim my vehicle, right? So let's get into this. Cost of sale versus expenses. This is something that's going to be specific to real estate. Sometimes people are sitting in here and they use these P&Ls for other businesses. So this is going to be specific to real estate sales. Does anyone get confused by like cost of sale versus expenses? I feel like when I've talked to people about P&Ls, that's like the most confusing thing for people. So for us on our P&L, right, I'm going to send my P&L to my tax accountant. My tax accountant doesn't, like what I pay in a brokerage fee or a commission split for a referral to an agent or something, they don't see that information, right? So we're going to talk specifically about real estate, but in the cost of sale, it's brokerage splits, referral fees, or agent commissions. If you've got a showing agent and you're splitting out some percentage, that kind of thing, that these are not 1099 people, right? This cost of sale is, it's coming in, you get your check at closing, you bring it to the brokerage, it splits out to those people, and then you get your check that's to you, which is your 1099 amount. And then we're going to track our expenses on our P&L for tax purposes, right? We can also track, we want to track our cost of sale, right? We want to see like, what does this cost me for brokerage fees or commission splits? If you have agents, buyer agents, like where is all of that going? But the cost of sale is not going to your tax person because that's not on your 1099. Does that make sense? And then of course your expenses are your operating expenses, right? If you have staff, whether they're a 1099 or a W-2'd person, some people have assistants or things like that, and they're 1099ing those people versus a W-2 employee. But those are both going to be operating expenses. Lead gen, office, technology, phone dues, these are all just different types of examples. And I always say, try to keep it similar each year. Don't rearrange all of your information every year. Try to keep it simple. So then it's easier for your accountant when they're filing taxes. Does anyone file their own taxes in here? That does a Schedule C?
My husband.
Really? That's impressive. I don't file my own taxes. I definitely let the accountant file my taxes. Because again, right, like I don't have a finance background. I'm really good at helping people buy and sell homes. Good. Any questions on that? Just cost of sale versus expenses. We're going to focus on expenses today because that's where we're going to see on our P&L. And I'll talk a little bit about net. Being in real estate from 11 years ago, I saw so many people with like total sale volume, gross commission income, and I saw these really big numbers. But of course, as a single mom, I was like, that's great and all, but like, how much money am I actually making? So to me, that matters most. I still track GCI, I still track these things. But the biggest thing is knowing how much money you're making. So it's going to be, again, this is real estate specific. Our gross commission income minus our cost of sale, minus our operating expense is going to be our true profit. We see some other words that are thrown around in finance with the word profit, but for us, we mean like profit, what's coming home to you, right, after your expenses. What's your income, really? We're going to dig into it because, of course, it's not always that like black and white. In mine, you're going to see my health insurance premiums are paid, my state taxes are paid, that kind of stuff. So those are included as expenses just because of my structure. Oh yeah, I put a note in here, right? Your business net versus your personal net. That's not going to, like my personal net. I don't want to get too complicated. We'll get into it and you can see it when we're in there because I have an S Corp and I W-2 myself. So my state income taxes are paid by my business and not by me personally. Let's get into it. Any questions on any of that before we jump into this P&L? Any questions online? I'll have Lydia just see if anyone has any, but I'm sure we'll get some questions as we jump into this. So let's just get the lay of the land. This is an Excel spreadsheet. I have not converted this. I use Google Drive quite a bit, right? I store my files there, things like that. Of course, I'm too paranoid to store my P&L on my Google Drive, so I don't. But you certainly can. This might adjust differently if you try to upload, like any Excel spreadsheet, if you try to upload it into a different system, it might change. So just keep that in mind. You're going to get an actual Excel spreadsheet. So lay of the land, all the tabs down here, these are all the months of the year. And then all the columns are the different types, right? Different types of expenses in December here. So it's not filled out yet, right? Like I'm updated till December 2nd. And then the rows are all the days of the month, right? Just keeping it simple. And so let's go to January's. That's filled out. This is my mileage. That's why that column is full. And then I have different expenses plopped in here, right? All the way through the year. And then on this, let's scoot over here after December. I don't know, this should actually be here. It's a live document, guys. So I didn't like my transactions after my year totals. I like year totals first. So, and everything totals up here on this last page is the year totals page, which is all these expenses are totaling up here. I keep my federal tax ID, my Minnesota tax ID on here too, just because these are like reminders for me to have, but these are my deposits. So the money that's being deposited, this is just from commissions, right? This is actually this isn't fake. I've just rounded all the numbers and changed them a little bit so that you're not, having all my exact information. But I do track some of this for myself. My accountant doesn't need all this information. I will actually come through and delete GCI because she does not know what that does not apply to her. She's like, wait, what are those numbers? Like, that's not my income. I'm tracking it just so that I see it visually. But especially with my accountant also, I don't print out January through December's. I just print this year's total page and I hand it to them. And I file my business taxes in for this business in 20 minutes. It's super fast. Faster than my personal taxes, that's for sure. So they total up on this page, expenses, net income. You see me tracking here my expenses less my state taxes and less my health insurance premiums because I'm just trying to see, right, what are my expenses that are true business expenses and not things that are more strategic, right? And then draws that you've taken for the year. I track these down here too because my accountant always asks for draws. And they're always going to ask for your end balance from the previous year, their end balance of this year, total mileage, that kind of stuff that's on here as well. I've erased some of this information, of course. I do W-2 myself, and I do W-2 my son. That's why you see those W-2s there. And then obviously the amounts that I withhold and pay them. I don't do, yeah, good question. Yes.
So what are your draws then? How are they separate from your W-2s?
Yeah, so good question. I'll try to explain this as best as I can, right? Because I'm not a tax accountant, but the W-2 for myself is what am I paying myself as a W-2? Because I'm going to pay Medicare, Social Security tax on that. And then and it has to be a reasonable amount for a real estate agent. And then draws because I'm a sole proprietor. So this is specific to me as a sole proprietor based on the information I know. I always have to say talk to your tax advisors. Every business is set up different. So I can take a draw from my business account. That is kind of how I'm paying myself, right? If I W-2 myself 70,000, I can draw 70,000. I want to for sure draw 70,000, but I can draw more than that also as a sole proprietor because I still have to pay taxes on all the money that my business makes. But I'm not paying personal taxes. That's just from the amount that's W-2. Does that make sense? Because you can draw more than you W-2 yourself as the sole proprietor based on what I've been told. Is that the most carefully way to say that? I don't know. So that can be different though for different businesses and the way that they're structured. I'm a sole proprietor and an LLC and an S Corp. So I'm going to answer them from that place. But I still track my draws, even if they're more than my W-2 amount, right? I want to make sure that I'm just tracking where money is going. Of course, I can see it all because it's all in my bank statements, but I don't want to just leave it there. I always put it in my, P&L. Any other questions? Any questions online with this? Okay. So when I send this to you guys, if you guys are filling out May, let's say you're this day, this amount came out, it's gonna total for you automatically on this page. These are all like equations, but you can change these. And again, once the class is done, or if anyone asks you for the P&L, if you have any questions, or you're like, hey, how can I modify this? Just email me. I'm happy to tell you how to modify it or delete it or make it your own and customize it, because your expenses might look different to you in your head, or how you want to track them might look different. And mine have changed a little bit over the years, but not a lot. If you want to change any of these columns, just change them on the January page, and they'll automatically change on all the other pages and on the totals page. But if you are just like messing around in your P&L and you mess it up, just let me know. Hit the back button, but also I can like reset your equation for you if you want.
And when you do your mileage, you also keep a day planner that shows each stop that you made and each call you've made.
Yes, yep, I actually have it like manually written
That's
down.
something that I know, sort of from experience, you don't have a backup for what you put down for mileage, you could get in a little trouble.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I track mine. So that's when I say track it every week. I'm tracking it on my planner. I try to put on my planner every day, but I'm inputting it into here every day. And my Google Calendar also, like if someone's like, were you actually there that day? I do have it all tracked in my Google Calendar. I do also have it written down, but that's just me trying desperately to not be an elder millennial and trying to be a digital, but I'm still attached to my like paper copy of things, because it's just how my brain works. But yes, you definitely want to back up, right? Because some of those apps too, they can wipe your information. I would definitely like file save. I back up my hard drives, do all that jazz, right? Since I don't have this in a cloud, don't have my P&L in a cloud. I'll record it and put it on Zoom, but I'm not putting it in my cloud. And then they'll total down here too, right? Like, GCI, what, deposits. So this number should match, again, right? My accountant's not seeing my GCI because that number doesn't make any sense to them. They don't understand that. Or they might if they work with realtors all the time. But I just delete that column for them. And then I'll save it. I'll save that one for them. I have like a taxes P&L where I just like delete some things that they don't need to complicate seeing. And then 190, this should match the 1099 amount that Heather sends me. So whenever Heather sends me my 1099, I go back, I match it. Every time I get a DA, what does it even stand for?
Disbursement authorization.
Oh, disbursement authorization. Every time I get one, when like Lydia and Heather send it to me, I open it up. You'll see, I'll actually pop over here. I open it up. I keep these yellow until I get that DA, and then I match the numbers across to make sure that they match. And then we'll get into that, but I do match them. So every time I get a 1099, that number should match the 1099 number here, because that's the deposits that KW has actually sent to me. And again, this P&L is just for the commissions that come in, right? Like a lot of us are dabbling in different businesses. Everyone has a side business. This is just specifically for the commissions that come in from sales. And of course I have a different P&L for different things, but we're not looking at those today. We're just doing the sales one because this applies to all of us here. So this totals, this number automatically pops over here when you get your deposit amounts, pops over here, and then all of these equations just work. So we can dig back into this a little bit. Do you guys have any questions on this totals page? This is the important one that goes over to the accountant for me. I just print this page and I bring it. Okay. Let's jump over here. I don't remember if I had this last year, but I keep track of all my transactions on here. Actually, the Zurich brothers inspired this because they had this like epic all-time transactions Excel spreadsheet, and it blew my mind. And I was like, yeah, why don't I have that? And then I proceeded to go back. I think that was like 4 years ago that I saw that or something. And then I went back and like re-recorded all my transactions just because I was curious. I'm like, oh yeah, what is that? You can pull a lot of this information. Of course, I went to reports and I've stored my reports over the years. So I go to my KW reports. Super easy to pull this information. You don't have to like go back to
I'm
like,
happy to help with that at any time.
Yeah, if you're online, whoever your MCA is, I don't want to throw them under the bus, but if they're as great as Heather, they'll help you with your reports. So I regularly use like checks and balances. I don't like to create new wheels. I'm just like, recreating ones that already exist. And it's a really great way to do checks and balances. So on top of a P&L, the transactions part of this, I kept this in the P&L you'll get if you want to use it. Because the Dessert Brothers did it. I've used it ever since I just was in their office talking to them and I saw their screen, and then they sent me like a copy of theirs, which was way more advanced. I did what you did, Candy. I was like, delete too much right away. I'm just getting into this and I've got to backtrack like 7 years. But I actually really love this. It kind of, it's very much for goal setting or just keeping me on like, okay, what's going on with different transactions that I have. And this is kind of modified. You can use it or not use it. And again, these numbers should match, right? Like when I get my DA, it should match. What's the GCI? What's getting split out to where? And then what's the actual deposit? And my yellow one is just pending this for this month, right? It's not green yet because it hasn't closed. And then they total down at the bottom. I left it really big in case you just have so many closings, like different years when I've had way more than this year. And it's a fuller list. But your total sale volume down here, GCI down here, again, it should match the stuff that's on the KW reports. And if it doesn't, I would be cross-checking a lot of my information. Usually 100% of the time I'm wrong. And I did a typo or something. So the KW reports are, I don't know if they've ever been wrong, just me. So yeah, we can see in here too, right? Like, we'll dig into that. We'll dig into like, what is my P&L saying to me? This is another page I added. Again, feel free to delete it. It's just, I feel like I'm always in my P&L. So it's just easy for me to goal track while I was in here because I'm using it to business plan. I use this also to track my income because I have different sources of income. And I was always in this P&L. This actually is where I'm like keeping track of my my income from different places. So if I have different P&Ls, I do actually put them on this one just to keep track because I felt like I was always in this one. Just because my sales business is my main business. I'm in it every day. And the other ones are more passive. So I have an income goal for myself. This is my actual income goal. These are actual numbers. They're rounded. And I'm just keeping track. So I should be on track for 301. So that's great. I can see now that I'm like, okay, I'm where I'm supposed to be. But not really where I'm supposed to be because some of my other goals I didn't hit, but that's where the analysis part of the P&L comes in. I keep track of like my average sale price. I probably do need to adjust that. I think, but either way, those are just the details of my P&L, right? Like whatever your average sale price is. And I do the MREA, like I use that model when I'm goal setting and I go backwards. I've done it for 11 years now. I still do it every year. This year, what happened, we can see by just looking at this, is my goal was 25 based off this information. I did not do that. I'll end up at 17, which is like slower than most years, but my average sale price is way higher than it's been in other years. So I didn't need to do as many. I keep track of these are just the big numbers for us, right? This GCI unit, number of units, volume, and then my net. Those are the big numbers for me. I don't know anybody else that's been in KW for a long time. There might be some other ones that are more important to you and you can always add them or ask me how to add them so that it's more customized to you. But those are the ones that I focus on. For me personally, also, I'm not as attached to like the number of transactions. I mean, I am because I'll take that number and divide it by 12. That's my goal I do all of that. But then I see where there's other places, right? Like if you have different streams of income, you can make money more here or there if you're losing money somewhere else. So my big thing is income goal just because that's modified over time, right? When I started, the only thing I had was commissions. And so my focus was always on that income. Did you have a question back there?
No, I was just,
He was just saying gesundheit.
yeah, she's sneezing.
Oh.
Sneezing.
Okay, so any questions on any of this? Okay. I'm gonna scroll down a little bit. Something else I've added, I deleted mine because they're quite personal. But I do put events in here and big rocks. And I don't even know where that came from. Maybe Jay. I think he's a big rock goal setting guy. I think, again, these are like KW things I've just absorbed over time. But I do put my big rocks in here. Again, I do use this P&L as like my main, like where is everything in one place. So my big rocks are on here and my events, because my big why is like big memories, so like vacations. I am trying to plan spring break, or I'm going to my brother's wedding, and I'll turn them green once they're done. It's a good way to like remember what's happening in your life too, when you go back to all these P&Ls from previous years. Like, oh yeah, what did I do? I'll just pull up my P&L and then I can see what I did that year, I guess. You don't have to use these. I think it is really helpful if just to like I just keep them in this place.
I love that idea. Do you also budget for those events on there? Like, do you have that money goal on there as a thing?
I don't. I know. I'm not, because I just like, I have a tendency to not spend money. So I'm usually, especially in like my coaching, I'm like putting myself in survival mode so that I make more money, but then I struggle to spend it. So I actually have goals to like spend money, right? Like you need to do this. I know that's a little backwards than most, but
There's some conflict too with whether it's a personal, like some of your event, like your brother's wedding or something
right,
like that.
yep.
That's a personal
Yep.
activity, not this business's activity.
Right, yes, yeah, so I track personal and business related things on here, yep, yeah, only, and you can separate them, but just so that I like everything in one place. But yeah, absolutely. I don't personally budget certain amounts for vacations. I just tend to not spend a lot of money anyway. But if I'm going on spring break, it's like I'm splurging, so I don't. But I don't recommend that for everyone. I just don't like to spend money, guys. So that's why. If you like to spend money, you should definitely set a budget, okay? So oftentimes what I found with my net sheets when I've done business planning classes, or especially my coach, something like that, I'm actually looking at my P&L and saying, you need to spend more money here. Like you're not spending enough money, which is probably what's limited my growth as well. If I'm too afraid to spend money, or I'm too afraid to take risks. But I see all that because I do my P&L, right? That's to me specifically. But the only way I'm able to even have those conversations is because I can bring this to the table and we can talk about it. That's usually what we're talking about, though, is the opposite of a budget. I need to but I probably should be setting a budget to spend money. Not on vacation. I do a good job spending money on vacations. You can ask my husband about that. Okay, let's get back into this. And again, as we you guys receive this P&L, you're just, messing around in it, making it more custom, more you. Feel free to email me or reach out to me and ask me questions or whatever that might be. And I'll answer them the best I can. A lot of us are individual agents, or if you have a team and you have individual agents, it's beneficial for them to have one of these. I want to talk a little bit about the MREA. We all know what the MREA is. I definitely have my MREA. Usually I bring it with this class, but I think everybody knows what it is at this point. The MREA 2 has come out a little bit. I wanted to talk a little bit about that because it's not so like 30, 30, 40 anymore, right? It changes a little bit, and everyone's is going to be kind of a little bit more unique to them too, right? So I just had 2 examples on here, but definitely go to the MREA budget model. I use it to say, okay, I do need to be spending more money here. Or you're looking at it, especially in this last couple of years, right? Like, where do I need to be cutting some expenses? I wasn't having that conversation because I just am stingy. So I just wasn't having that conversation, Candy. But it is a common conversation.
I need more TAM in my life.
My husband does not want more TAM in his life. That's a whole nother, that's like a coaching class, yeah, for me. So let's look at 150. I just want to compare this and the next slide because it does change, right? The bigger your business gets, if you get someone in here that's got a big team, let's say we get Bethany in here. Her P&L is going to look so much different than mine. Mine is mostly focused on me as an individual, right? But if you've got a big team, lots of agents, you want to track all that team information, it's going to look a lot different. Your cost of sales is going to look different than someone, let's say, at 150 versus 340. So I'm mostly pointing this out not to get lost in the details, but just to point out that your expenses are going to change a little bit, right? Especially as you start to grow, you get an admin, salary, things like that. So at 150, we can assume you probably don't have staff, right? You don't necessarily have a showing agent. It's probably just you. And this is what MRE 2 has said about cost of sale, operating expenses, and your net income. Then it's gonna vary, but as you bump up to 340, then your cost of sale goes up, probably because you have an executive assistant, or you have somebody that's helping you manage all of this, right? Or if you're doing like a transaction company, that's a cost of sale too, right? You're paying it per transaction. That's gonna go up on your cost of sale. So you're gonna see different percentages and different numbers based off the income bracket. I know Lydia was asking about if we had that like MREA 2 where it breaks up the different income amounts. I saw it somewhere and I haven't been able to find it like in a digital copy that's easy to read. But it is kind of helpful to look at, so you can look at different like price points or income points, I should say. It's funny though, it doesn't change a ton, you know, from like 340 to $1 million, their percentages don't change a whole ton. Which I thought was super interesting. I guess it made sense though. Like once you have staff, right? That's like most of the time, bigger businesses know like staff is the biggest expense you're gonna run into. So it's gonna adjust your P&L quite a bit once you hire staff. And I've had staff and I haven't, and it's changed and it hasn't, you know, so you're gonna get different percentages. Analysis, again, this is my favorite part of my P&L, is it makes it so much easier to do business planning. It makes it so much easier to figure out in my coaching classes, like, where do you need to spend money? Or am I behind? Do I need to focus on more leads? Do I need to do more open houses? Do I need to adjust some things? And for me, mine's modified a little bit over the years, because when I was setting my goals, it was just based on sales, but now I have different streams of income. So if like when the market slowed down for us, then I can focus on making income somewhere else, so that I do hit my ultimate goal is my income goal. Not just like my sales goal, right? But for the first many years, it was just my sales commission was my income. That's where my goals were focused on. So the analysis on my P&L has become so much more important as things get more complex, so that I can take a look at where is money coming from, where is my time being spent, where's my money being spent, and where do I want to make any modifications. The biggest one that I saw just as my time in KW is like a fly on the wall is ROI. I feel like in our industry, it's so easy because we get more sales calls than I feel like a lot of us make. So it's so easy for us to spend money on leads, on things like that. And I'm like, are you getting the money back? Or are you getting a return on your investment? Like, does it make sense to be spending money in those areas? And the only way you're going to know that is if you can see it, right, on here. I wrote up there, am I spending too much or too little? Because that's me, right? I'm spending too little usually. And then what am I getting paid? That's like the biggest thing for me, right? How much money is coming home? I use this very much to do my business planning. I do my business planning in October, but usually by then I can see like, and I use my KW command to track my transactions, like like my pipeline, I should say. My transactions that you saw in my P&L were just pending that are going to close, right? But the rest of them I track on my command. And then by October, I can pretty much see, all right, these are probably going to close. I have a pretty good idea what that's going to be, and I'll merge it with my P&L and say, okay, I've got my pipeline and my P&L. What's it going to look like for next year? And I can start doing my business planning. So I definitely use my P&L, right? Because I do a goal for my income, but then how am I going to get there? And we can jump back into mine. You'll see that my income goal was different than obviously my 1099 amount that's coming from KW, because I have some different sources. The last one here, this is maybe it's just more from me, but it's definitely the stuff that's come out of my coaching. Like, why do we do all of this, right? Like, why am I answering my phone at 9:30 at night? Like, why am I disrupting my family dinner? Why am I doing all of this? And the thing for me is to fund the life that I want, right? Like for me, it was, I want to be home with my son. I want to get him on the bus. I want to get him off the bus, and I want to be able to be at all of his activities. And over the last 11 years, I've been able to do that. And I know you all just saw the screen, right? My income goal this year was 300,000. And we're going to hit it, hopefully, as long as that last closing closes, right? And we are past inspection. We just have appraisal and closing. And it's closing the day after Christmas, okay? So why am I doing this? Well, one, I really like my clients and I'm really good at helping them, but I can live the life that I want to live, right? And I can keep track of it. I'm not a single mom anymore, which comes with its own complications, right? So there's a second income in my house. I have not merged that stuff yet, right? My P and L is still very me. We haven't quite worked that out yet. So the P and L you see today is very mine. We'll work on that. But the biggest thing is to fund the life you want, right? Like, why are we doing all this? Why do we get into real estate to begin with, right? Didn't want a ceiling on our head, wanted to live life on our terms, have a flexible schedule, which means work all the time. But it pays off and we have big rewards, right? So for me though, my big why is to make big memories. So and to do that, I have to make money, right? So I want to, open the floor for any questions. And if you want, we can dip back into my P&L if you guys have specific questions on it. Otherwise, that's really the nuts and bolts of it. Anybody have any questions or anything like that? Anything online that anybody has?
I'm so excited we get to get a copy of this.
Let me know what you would add too. Let me know how you would modify it.
Yeah, when you have your source, like where your business is coming from.
I do, yes, yep. And maybe I'll add that back, but I do have that on, my transactions checklist. I have an all-time transactions checklist. What you saw is just for this year. And I'll just copy and paste it, like with the desserts ad, which is like all-time. I just took it and put it in my P&L. So I have an all-time one that I track that on. And I track, like, they tracked gifts and I was like, genius. What was their gift? Or like, where did they come from? Yep. I also definitely label everything in command. So if I ever don't know, I just go back to command and look. Like when I didn't have command though, when I was like backtracking 7 years, I didn't know that. I just use my memory. But yes, on my all transactions checklist, which is different, or not checklist, sorry, it's also in command. My all transactions Excel spreadsheet, I do have that on there. But most of my business, my cost of sales is really low, right? Because mine's mostly organic. It's open houses, it's organic. I'm not like, they're not from referral. I don't pay for leads, that kind of stuff. That's why my cost of sales is very low, because I don't do those things. But that would look different, right? If somebody's sources were different. Mm-hmm. And then I would say, are you getting a return on your investment? Yeah, good question. But I do have, yeah, the all transaction list. Ask the desserts. That's what, like, it's a genius thing to have if you want to just track your business, see how you've done over the years, but it's easier to pull when you just locate your reports and then you have them all listed there. Any questions online, Lydia? Awesome. Well, you guys can hop off. If you guys, I'll stay here too, and happy to answer any questions or dig into it specifically if you guys want. But otherwise, yeah, thanks for coming.
And can we make sure everyone online gets a copy of your P&L?
Oh, yeah, great.
You
Yeah,
can
I'll
just send it to me and I'll make a list of.
Yeah, I usually just send it out to
I mean, you can just send it out to everyone. That's awesome.
Yep, yeah, happy, yeah, it won't be the one that has all my information on it, it'll be like, but yeah, otherwise, even if you're not watching the Zoom or whatever it is, just info at North Home Team, and I'm happy to send it to you, otherwise Lydia will have it and Candy will just send it out to everyone. But even if your friends want it, somebody, you're talking about it, somebody wants it, just have them, email info at North Home Team, just say P&L and I'll send it right over to you. And I'll actually, I think I have it set for, it's really right here on my screen. Let me exit out. I'll show you guys exactly which one I'm talking about.
What was that vote?
That was from when I took my son and I to the Virgin Islands.
All right, cool.
That was a picture I took. Yeah,
Oh,
it was beautiful. We were snorkeling that day and we saw a reef shark. So here's the 2025 blank P&L. If you need to do this for 2024, you can do it. Just change the number to 2024, okay? And then put everything in there. But it'll be the same, right? So it's all blanked out and you can put your information in here.
Do your categories follow the MREA chart of accounts?
Not exactly, which is a good question because this is really geared towards my tax accountant. But you absolutely can switch them to follow that. For me, for some reason over the years, I've drifted away from it or I've made it more specific just from conversations specifically with my accountant. They're close, but they're not exact. But that would be fantastic. But again, let's remember, keep it simple. I'm a high D, right? So I'm not high detail, surprisingly. Maybe it doesn't come off that way with this, but I love that idea. If you can match it to MREA and see your percentages with the different categories. I don't do that far, which I think is great. If you do follow the MREA and look at the models for it, because they're all in there. What percentage you be spending on each different thing is in the MREA too.
And do you have a payroll company that does your W-2?
My accountant does it.
You're a little unusual too, being a high D, that you even do any of this stuff.
Yeah. It's unusual to be a high D and do these things. My mother is a very high SC, if that helps explain it. The towels have to be folded the right way. But also like out of survival, right? Like
That's right.
if money really matters when you don't have a lot of money and you want to keep track of it. And so I have just done this for a very long time in my life and it just hasn't changed.
Right.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to add a couple zeros to these numbers before I feel like I don't need to worry about money anymore, right, John? Give me like a couple of years.
So you mentioned you have a few profit and loss for different businesses?
Yeah.
What are those?
They'll look just like this, right? So if it's a rental income, that type of stuff, I use this also, I just modify it, right? I don't have GCI on there. I just like the deposits are rental income deposits and the expenses are just expenses for those things. Yep. But I use the same one, I just modify it. And there's not as much on there, as I don't have as many expenses, right? It's like property tax and like bonds.
Would you, if you had multiple investment properties, would you use like a P&L for each property?
I personally do,
Yeah.
but it's just because that's how my brain works. I just don't like to commingle things, right? Like if I did, I've never been audited, knock on wood. But if I did, I don't really want this information mixed with this information, mixed with this information. I like.
It's good to separate them too, to know the ROI on each one of them.
Yes. Yep. So I do. That's when it gets, really complicated because now right, my husband has the degree in real estate finance. So I'll keep these. And then when his spreadsheets are too complex for us, right? Like he's just in that all the time. He's not doing real estate sales every day, answering the phone, being with clients. He can stare at an Excel spreadsheet every day. I don't know, Heather, you stare at Excel spreadsheets every day. They're really complex. So they keep it simple, keep it separate. That's my policy on all of it. And then I just put them together on that last page to just visually see everything. Because I'm very much manifest, like a vision board. That's the number I want. And then I will somehow gravitate towards it. If I say I want this much in income, I somehow get there, but I gotta be able to visualize it and see it. So that's why you see it all finalized on that goals page.
And so on those monthly tabs, are you manually entering all those amounts in there or do you have it feeding from somewhere?
No, they're manually entered. I think if you want to more automated, like TurboTax does, like they'll automatically put them in for you. Like you can just sync your bank statements. You can definitely do that. I just haven't used TurboTax, but I know they do that.
I think QuickBooks would do that.
You can download everything.
Yeah, QuickBooks, yep, and you just download it all. Yep. But I just haven't done that. It's just not, I just had a system that worked and then didn't do that. And some people don't want to, but this is an easy, simple way. Again, maybe it's the paranoia, not having like QuickBooks or Turbo or whatever they are, having access to all my bank statements. So that could just be me and my not totally comfortable with technology. But no one's ever stolen my identity, guys. So we're fine. Good question though. So there are definitely like more efficient ways to do it, things like that. But simple one, especially if you have, you can modify this P&L to work for a lot of different types of things. Or everyone seems like they have a side hustle, but then everybody forgets they gotta pay taxes on that income, that kind of stuff. So you can utilize this and just modify it for whatever.
You feel like too, when you're mentally, when you are adding each thing in there manually, that you are being more attentive than if you're just downloading and not maybe looking at each line item.
Yeah, very much so, right? I'm very aware of what money is being spent all the time. I probably was before I did this. That's maybe why I do it this way. But yeah, for sure. I definitely know where money is going.
And you're looking at this at least weekly.
Yep, you'll see it on here on my desktop with these beautiful pictures. These are like things, well, these are just my to-do things that like must be done. But I have it up here in the top right corner as a shortcut, just so it's easy to access. It's easy for me to pull up. And again, I felt like I was in it all the time, so I might as well just put my goals in there too. Because they were in like paper copy. I still have them in paper copy. They're like taped to the wall or something, but it was easier for me to just see all in one there. Yep. Good question. But yeah, put in a shortcut, or whatever yours is, just a shortcut, a reminder, whatever it is. If it's automated, great. If not, this works too. So this is what I'll send out. It's all blanked out for you. You can delete columns, change it, don't use things if you don't want to. That kind of stuff.
Awesome, thank you. I'm so
Damn.
happy to send that out.
Yeah, thanks for coming, guys. And thanks for everybody online.
They say thank you.
Stay warm. They can call out the cold to come here.